power outages are a choice. Okay, so let me show you what I take and I mean. So you've noticed in the news that there's a big storm that came across, went across Texas, went all the way up through the middle of the United States. The effect is there's over 14 states that are now experiencing power outages. They started introducing rolling power outages to the point that they actually even went down to just flat out power outages. It's kind of crazy, right? When you think about it, you're like, man, like what would it be like if I had no power? Here's what my cousin said. Or this is my wife's cousin. And so she just posted, she said on here on Facebook, she goes, for anyone following, power stopped rolling or power stop or stopped the rolling power outages last night at 7 p.m. So she was experiencing that. She goes, now we're just completely out of power. It's been 29 hours since we've had this issue. She goes, the internal temperature in my house is now in the 40s. She goes, it's 16 degrees outside. It's bull. I'm cold. I'm tired. I'm hungry, which is kind of crazy. Here's the thing that we're running into, and this is what we're running into, is like in the beginning when we started using electricity, the only solution we really had was the grid. This is number one. The grid was required in the beginning because it was too expensive to create power plants. It was too expensive to create them, to maintain them, to do all that crazy stuff, right? And so as a result, we all kind of collectively came together and said, all right, let's build this power company, let's build the grid structure, and let's start powering our houses. And that system worked phenomenally well for quite a while. Here's the thing that's starting to change, and here's the thing that they're starting to see, and the disruptions that are starting to show up, is if I come over here and I look up, so according to the U.S. Department of Energy, okay, 70% of power transmissions are 25 years or older, 60% of circuit breakers are 30 years or older, and 70% of transmission lines are 25 years or older. Or in other words, all of our entire electrical grid in the entire United States is massively aging. I was actually had this conversation with somebody, the director of power at Provo Power, and he was pointing out the obvious, which is, he goes, we have very aging grid lines that are going on right here. So now we've got to figure out how we're going to maintain them and how we're going to replace them. The problem actually gets deeper than this. It's not just that the utility grids, the grid lines are all aging. But the problem comes into is if you look at this graph. Now this graph right here, let me pull it up a little closer so you can see it. Okay, this is showing, this is from our world in data. What they're doing is these guys have been tracking all of the natural disasters that have been occurring throughout the entire world since the 1900s. And you see the 1900s all the way up through 2019. And what you see is a significant trend. What it means is there's substantially more natural disasters that are taking place. You're seeing earthquakes, you're seeing storms, you're seeing all kinds of typhoons, you're seeing all of this crazy stuff is happening. And the problem is as we sit here and we cling to the old school data, which means like the only place that you can get power is from the utility company. The utility company is the single point of failure. The power goes down, boom, everybody's in trouble. Then we wind up in this place where you've got 14 states that are having rolling outages. You got places that just absolutely have no power, sitting on 29 hours and nothing. And it creates this enormous problem, right? Well, the thing is the way we used to do it does not mean that's the way we have to do it in the future. Let me give you an example of this. Do you remember back in the day, horses used to be the dominant way of transportation in America. Everybody had a horse. Probably had multiple horses, okay? Horse, whip, and buggy. And those horses had a habit of pooping in the street. And nobody likes to walk in the street and step in. Yes, nobody wants to step in it. So the cool thing is all of a sudden automobiles came along. It was faster, more efficient, more reliable. It allowed you to get to more places quicker. And as a result, we finally broke our addiction to horses. Horses actually started going into a significant decline. And so we finally broke that tradition. But as a result, we got automobiles, we can go places faster and everything's better. So the new thing is that bubbles up is there's a way to create independence. Independence is a choice. We had a privilege of separating ourselves from horses. The cool thing is now, you now know that these earthquakes and events are taking place, which means that it's going to disrupt the single point of power that we have available to us. We now know that there's power shortages rolling across multiple states. We also know that power, we are having problems right here locally with our own power. In fact, I was talking to the Provo City Power Director, and he was like, he pointed out, he goes, it was fun because I like talking to somebody just here local instead of just talking about every other problem throughout the world. And he was saying we have massive we have major aging issues with our grid line. Well, the other thing about Utah is we are sitting on a fault line. Okay, this fault line is going to create a significant issue. We don't know when we're going to have an earthquake or a natural disaster, but the point is it will happen at some point. And so then the question is when it happens, will it affect you? Now, obviously, if you have an earthquake or whatever, of course it will, right? But if you think about it, there's people that have got on respirators, there's people that need power. You got to think about in the winter, many of our houses are powered with being able to heat them. Like, you need power for about everything you can think of. Now, the last thing that you want to do is what some of these folks have been doing is they pop out their charcoal burner, put it inside their apartment, start burning the charcoal, and then they kill themselves from asphyxiation with charcoal, right? Or the last thing that you want to do is discover you went out and you bought a $10,000 generator, and it takes gas, so now you got to go to and from the gas station. Like, it's not even practical to be able to power your house on a sustained period of time with a generator. It's like you can't jump in your backyard, start digging a big old hole and start pulling out oil from the earth that you're going to put in the generator. It doesn't have a renewable source connected to it. And so the secret is now that we've got solar power, we got solar panels, we also have batteries. We can literally put solar on a house, and we can literally put batteries in a house, and boom, the power goes out and you don't even notice it. I mean, people around you might notice, like, I got solar up on my roof, I'm adding more solar panels, and I'm dropping a battery on top of it. Because here's what I do know. This is what I do know. When an event takes place, okay, like when you think of COVID, for just example, okay, when COVID hit, all of a sudden everybody wanted generators. Why? I'm not entirely sure. But everybody decided they want generators. Lowe's, Home Depot, every single store was completely sold out. The company called Generac, they provide generators. They are back ordered. They became back ordered for 5 months. You would sit there and wait for 5 months to get it. The problem is when the problem strikes, if you don't already have the assets in place, there will be a run on it, like a run on the bank, and boom, you can't get access to it. And so the secret is get ahead of it. That's why I put solar on my house. That's why I'm adding more solar, and that's why I'm dropping a battery on my house. Because, like, when it happens, like, I don't want it to happen to me. There's a lot of people out there that are going to get screwed because they're not prepared. But that does not have to be you. So, anyway, this is what I mean. Power outages are a choice. The old school said we had to have a grid. We do not have to be tied to a grid anymore because there's new alternatives that came online. We now have the ability to protect us and our families by introducing solar, dropping batteries on the house, and boom, voila. Next thing you know, you are not dependent on the grid. Think about it. If you take your city, the city where you're in right now, and if every single house or resident puts solar on the house, they dropped a battery on top of it, booyah. Like, there's not going to be a single point of failure. Like, the grid can go down, fine, but not every single house is actually going to discover that they have a disruption in their power and their batteries, or in their solar and their batteries, right? Because there's no single point of failure. So, anyway, that's it's kind of, I guess, the one story I'd like to suggest that you consider is, you remember Noah in the ark. He said, hey, it's going to rain, and not everybody believed him. But there was a whole lot of there was a flurry of activity and interest when it started raining. But at that point, it was too late because they actually had to be prepared and on the boat in advance of the big old rainstorm. Anyway, so you can go to AskSolarMike.com if you want to figure out how to get you and your family prepared. I can drop solar on your house, 0 money down. I can cut your electric bill in half. So not only are you prepared, but you're spending a heck of a lot less. If you were kind of like me, where you're like, I want to be prepared, and you say, I want to introduce batteries, I can put batteries on your house with 0 money down. What you're going to discover is it's more cost efficient to helping you and your family than taking and buying a generator. In fact, when the generator is out of gas, the sun seems to still come up, and light's been shining on this earth for probably 1 million years, but generators have not been around that long. And so, anyway, it's got a very renewable power supply that can take and help us out. So you can go to AskSolarMike.com and learn